Okay, now I want to talk about database reformatting. Before we go on, this is only something you have to do if you imported some data. So if you skipped the data import section, you can just skip this as well because it's not relevant for you. So this database reformatting is basically to make your data consistent in the database. And it's for the cases where, for example, I know that weather display provides log files which have 1-minute intervals. But as I said previously, in your database you will have 5-minute intervals. And you don't have to worry. The template uses a very smart way of aggregating the data, so you should not lose any records. But for example, temperature is saved in 3 separate fields, so you'll have your maximum, minimum, and the average saved in separate fields. So the point here is, if you're familiar with statistics, you know that having a different interval would cause problems. And I will show you what I mean. Now let's say that I import data that are in 1-minute intervals. In other words, let's say that I have at 10 o'clock temperature would be 15 degrees. Okay? And then 10, 0, 1, sorry, would be like that. 15.1 degrees. Now, and then we have 0.2 and so on. Now let's say that then I start using the template and I have these numbers there. First of all, 1-minute interval is not good because it will tremendously slow down your database. Your page will behave slowly. Now you might not notice it at the beginning because your database might be small, but over time this is not a very good idea. And as I said, it uses some smart aggregation, so really the parameters that should be logged more often than 5 minutes are logged more often than 5 minutes, just that they're saved in separate fields. And so let's say that I now start updating the database in the default 5-minute interval, so I put like this, and again we have some temperature here, let's say 16, 16.2 and 16.3. Now what's going to happen here is the average is going to be calculated by summing up these and dividing it by the number of rows. And we can see that this will not be correct because these were actually in an interval of 2 minutes and these are 10 minutes and they're treated as the same interval. So that's why you need to make sure that you have the same interval. And this reformatting is for cases where you have exactly this, where you have shorter interval than it's in the database. We have 1 minute here. So in that case, we would use the database reformatting. And I've explained here how it works. Basically use this script called reformat.php, and it will, in one single command, change all the values in your database. It would aggregate them together. So in this case, it would basically take the average of this, and it will take all values. Let's say that I have something like this here, and some values here. The reformat script will simply say, aha, well, this is all just one interval for the database. This is 5 minutes. So it will take the average of this and save it as, it will take the average of this, save it to the new field in the database. It will create a new field and delete these. So in this case, all these would be aggregated into one single row, and it would save the average of this into the temperature average. It would find the maximum of these and save it to the temperature maximum field, minimum, temperature minimum field, and do that with all the other parameters. But the point is that in the end, you will have data which, in this case, you would have, let's say, 0.5. And so then, when we have that together with these, the statistics would work nicely. And one thing I want to mention is that make sure that when you run this script, you're logged in as an admin. As I showed you previously, you have to be logged in as an administrator. Otherwise, you will simply get an error. And you will see, because if you open that script, if you were not logged in, it would tell you unauthorized access. And so in that case, you have to go to your control panel and do it from there. So as I've showed you here, now I'm logged in. You see the user icon. So we click that, and now we're logged in. Now I can go. Let's open this. Now I can go to this. This is just an example, of course. You have to use the address you're using, and it's in the install directory, and it's called reformat.php. And this is very important. You have to wait until the script's finished. This can take quite a while. If you have a lot of records, it has to go and it has to do these calculations, this averaging for every single record, and then save it to a new row. Just in case something went wrong, before it actually does something, it creates a backup copy of your original table, which will be called all data backup. So what it will do is it will simply, the first thing it will do is it will copy the database, copy the table, name it all data backup, and then it will start working with that original all data table. So in case that for whatever reason that script just fails, it doesn't run till the end, or it makes a mess or whatever, probably just email me and we'll get your backup copy and we'll make sure, we'll see what's wrong and why this didn't work. And if this times out, then simply run it again. Just refresh the page, because let's say it only does half and then it times out. And if I hit to refresh, it would skip the first half because it's already converted, and it would do the other one. So just make sure that it gets till the end, and then you're ready to set up the database updates and start basically updating your database and working with your template. So that's it for this part.